Peace, family. This is Brother Rich, Underground Railroad Radio. I'm back in the building with your boy, Minister Ju and Noble Anpu. What's going on, family?
What's happening?
Hey, what up, Rich? What's good?
Good to have y'all on the show, man. The scientists, the quantum physicists, the spiritualists, the priesthood. Y'all be doing your thing when it comes to the spirituality. Basically, what we're going to deal with today, these news hits people's, people are glued to their phone. So they know everything that's going on in the news, and it gets reported on Facebook. Your timeline gets flooded. And during the past 2 years, it's just been flooded. I mean, flooded with instances of brutality and black people getting shot, stabbed, choked to death on film. You name it, it's been on film the last 2 years. So, it's starting to bother a lot of spiritual people. And, everybody has their own method of how to go about what's going on, because it's happening at such a rapid pace. It's happening more and more often. People don't know if it's because of the camera phones or because of this or that. But, everybody has their perspective on what we should do when these events happen. The most recent event, Charleston, South Carolina, the shooting at the Black Hearst church where 9 people were pronounced dead. I want to get you two, the priesthood, Noble Anpu, Minister Ju. I want to get the priesthood perspective of what really is going down and what should be our proper response to what we're continuing to see flood our attention on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to let y'all go off. Just go ahead, brothers.
No, you want me to take this first, or you want to rip?
You can go ahead, man. You can go ahead.
All right, cool. All right, so let's look at the situation and the circumstances that's going on with this previous situation down in Charleston, Carolina, right? We had this gunman run into this church, take 9 lives out of the church. He walks away unscathed, right? This church has a history of, shall we say, trouble as far as being able to stay open, being able to stay up as an establishment, as a place where people can come in solidarity and pray and worship. Whatever they feel in their hearts is applicable to them and their faith, right? But when we look at the history, I just want to run down a few things, right, to set the context, because Minister Ju is going into the quantum on this thing, because that's the causal phenomenon for everything that's happening in this reality. We got a church that was burned down. This church was burned down to the ground 200 years ago, right? You had an earthquake topple this church before, and it was rebuilt. And this is the legendary church where Denmark Vesey, they say, plotted a slave revolt out of this church, right?
Right.
Now, what's interesting is that according to the dates that they have for the slave revolt that was supposed to take place but got thwarted by the plantation owners and the white people who were involved in the politics of the town at that time, this revolt was supposed to take place on June 17, 1822, where this revolt was supposed to be launched, right? But a few weeks after this date, the brothers that were going to plan this revolt end up being killed, right? So we have to ask ourselves a question, right? Because, so many times people be like, man, that's coincidental, right? But when you understand the quantum side, the spiritual side, you understand that there's no such thing in the world as a coincidence, right? What we're witnessing is the repeat of thought forms that are still coexisting in this particular reality. And it's attaching itself to what we call walk-ins or hosts, these individuals who actually play out these same states of consciousness that were rendered 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And that's kind of what I want to get into. So I'm just going to jump right into it. When you understand the body and the brain specifically, right? Because I want to be clear tonight on what I'm saying. I'm going to take people to the causal level. You may think that it's a physical thing solely, but the causal level, right? We're dealing with thought. We're dealing with currents of thoughts that affect physical matter and move physical matter, called slave owners, plantation owners, KKK leaders, governors who lived 200 years ago, 300 years ago, when the mindset of being totally vulgar, right, and hate in their heart still permeates in the magnetic field of this planet. So when you hear these holy books talk about you're dealing with principalities and not flesh and blood, this is a science that this is talking about. You're still having to contend with thought forms that are lodged in the Earth's magnetic field, and because we don't understand our connection in our brains to the field and these waves of electricity and magnetism, we don't understand that we are attaching ourselves to these same thought forms, and we are playing out the same movie from 100 years ago, from 50 years ago, from 200 years ago, even from 3 weeks ago. And I'm going to show and prove that tonight as well. So what I'm going to say is that for all of us who are complaining, and I understand where the emotionalism comes from, right? I get it, right? I'm not being insensitive to your humanity and having compassion, et cetera, et cetera. But what I am saying is because you lack the wisdom and understanding of how your brain functions and how this thing actually has access to the quantum, right? And what you're choosing to observe from your day-to-day experience with these things that you see on the news, you, yes, you, who are watching these events, every day you are participating and creating the next event to transpire and happen, right? So we have to look at this thing. We have to say, okay, because I was just on here last week talking about collapsing waves and particle waves and observation, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Well, when we look at this thing, right, we have to understand how imagery is created. So you see Channel 2, 5, 7, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all these different stations, right? Steady bombarding your consciousness every day with these images, right? Of brutality, of injustices, of all of these things. And then we get in our feelings, and then we start saying stuff like this. Oh, Obama didn't call this guy a thug. He didn't call him a terrorist, but he called the people in Baltimore thugs. He called them terrorists. And then we get upset because the news media let some white guys on bikes have a seat when they just knocked off 25 people, right? But somebody black gets into an encounter and they gun them down, they rough them up. Freddie Gray is dead, paralyzed, yada, 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 yada. And we have to understand, right, once we get past the emotionalism, we have to look at the science of why that's being done and the effects that it has on creating external events once you internalize it. Because when you turn off of your TV and you step away from your cell phone or whatever, your tablet or whatever device that you have to view these things via observation, you still are creating that imagery in different waking moments of the day. You don't have to be looking at your phone to still see the image in your mind of Freddie Gray when you're thinking about the injustice. You don't have to look at CNN to still see this white guy going to church and murder these 9 people who look like you. You don't have to have these things on. Once the imagery is planted in your consciousness, it's there, which now is taking hold in a brain part called your hippocampus, which is responsible for inner imagery, spatial orientation and recognition, right? And it is also the only part in your brain that actually synthesizes theta waves. So now you wonder why you keep seeing these images, right? It's because they know that imagery creates reality. And I give you an example, right? I might have said this before, right? And here's the kicker. They know that you're going to get emotional. So they know your amygdala in your brain is going to start firing crazy, right? Because that part takes the least amount of electricity to stimulate it in the whole brain. So they know that brain part, which is dealing with emotion and fear and anxiety from all these things that you're seeing, and then the next thing you're saying is, we got to go get our guns, and we got to go do this, and we got to do that, and we got to be ready, because now the fear of what you're seeing taking place has now registered in the amygdala in your brain, right? And so the amygdala is in the limbic brain, which is very, very close to the hippocampus, and it actually is connected by fibers and synaptic channels in the brain to connect with one another. So now, here we have this imagery that you're seeing, coupled with the fear and the anxiety, right? And now here you go on this emotional tangent, not knowing that the emotion and imagery is actually what charges the quantum. You see? Let me say that again. Your emotional temperament and your imagery that's inside of you subjectively, right, creates reality. And you wonder why they play a commercial all day, and then you find yourself in the shopping mall buying or endorsing what you've been seeing on your TV for a month. Because the imagery is collapsing inside of your mind, right? And now because you don't know how your brain parts are working, your life is mimicking the imagery that's being bombarded into it, which is creating an external event or an external reality. So we have a situation. Let me give you an example of how powerful this thing is, right? In 1898, there was a novel written called The Futility, right? And this author, I think his last name was Roberson, right? You can Google this. Just Google Titan versus Titanic. He wrote a novel in 1898 where he built a cruise liner, right, that was 800 feet, went 25 knots in speed. It was labeled unsinkable. It had a shortage of lifeboats. It sunk in the month of April in the North Atlantic. 2,500 people died, and it struck an iceberg. This is what this man recorded in a book in 1898. Roughly 13 years later, a boat was built that was 882 feet, went 22.5 knots, sailed on the North Atlantic, sank in the month of April. I think to be exact was April 14th is the day that the Titanic actually sunk, but sunk in April, right, and carried 2,200 people. This was 1912, and it also struck an iceberg. So now, you got all these people be talking about Tahuti and scribing, and they, but they don't understand the motion, right? Movement, i.e. Mercury, right? The moment you start appropriating imagery into your mind, right, and you set it in motion, which is set in motion through an emotion, this is how it's set in motion, you now start to manipulate physical matter. You now start to manipulate physical matter. So now, 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, we have a young lady, well, I forget the town that it happened in, with a 14-year-old girl, McKinley Police Department, there's an enraged cop comes, body slammer, yada, yada, yada. Then a couple of days ago, you get the same thing happen at another pool party in Ohio. Another teenage girl gets assaulted. I think she was 14 years of age as well in the state of Ohio, right? When we understand that we are the gods, and I mean that literally, we are the gods that are creating the phenomenon of life, right? Through emotion and imagery, all of the injustices that we are being bombarded with, we can reverse it immediately. But we keep thinking that the objective world, via going to court, filing paperwork, marching, going to get we keep thinking that all of these things is the remedy, when logic, when you just start to use your regular logic and you look in the past of how you've already done all of these things and you're still right here now, then we have to understand there's another part of consciousness that we have to reach, and it requires us to know that internally is where we're creating the circumstances of life. Okay? So when you understand time and space, right, they tell you, let's take a loaf of bread, for example, right? Two people who are on the exact same angle, right, because we're dealing with time and space. The more you have of one, the less you have of the other, right? When two people are on the same line in space, right, and neither one of them are moving, right, they appear to be moving at the same speed in time. The moment one of those persons starts to move, because motion actually affects the time-space continuum. So when one person starts to move, the angle of perception and observation changes in the quantum field. Meaning, what you can see now in motion means your perception of me can change. You might see me 200 years in the future, depending upon your angle and my motion of how fast I'm moving, depending upon your angle. Or you might see me 100 years in the past, based upon my angle and your motion. These are the laws of time and space when we get into quantum phenomenon. So, how do we have, right? How do we have a situation where Denmark VC is here and you see through the same situations in time and space, these events keep happening at the same damn church? And by the way, this church, they said when they were going to do the revolt and the revolution, they were going to leave and go to Haiti, where they had just become free through the revolution that they had with the French. And now all of a sudden, today and yesterday in the news, the Haitian people are in the news because now the Dominican is stripping them of their citizenry. So you see all of these corresponding principles in time.
Okay.
You see? So now, what this means is, because they keep saying, we keep repeating history over, brother. Pay attention to history. We're going to keep repeating history, right? I'm going to tell you why you're going to keep repeating history. You're going to keep repeating history because you have failed to observe the phenomenon from another angle in your consciousness, which means through the imagery in your own mind. They did an experiment with some people over in London, some taxi cab drivers who have been driving for 40 years, Rich. 40 years they have been driving taxis in London. One of the taxi cab drivers got into an accident and he damaged his hippocampus. It was no longer functioning at a regular rate, right? They told him, we need you to get from Chase Bank to McDonald's, taking the shortest route, right? Because, you know, a taxi cab driver has been driving for 40 years. They know all the shortcuts and the back roads and the back alleys to get from A to B in the shortest amount of time. What they found out was this taxi cab driver whose hippocampus was damaged, not only could he get from point A to B, Rich, he continued to go around in circles or in squares on all the main streets and kept going past his destination because he didn't have the imagery available to be able to get to a destination. So now, when Ju tries to tell the people that this thing is way more mental than any piece of paper or bullet or gun can render you justice down here, I ain't telling you the truth. This man could not even get to point A to B. In fact, he went all around it and had been doing this for 40 years. Tells you that without the proper processes of imagery in the mind, you cannot get to where you're going. You can't get there. So if somebody is constantly putting imagery in your mind and you're choosing to observe it every day, not knowing that the quantum is on, whether you are conscious of it or not, you're speaking to somebody who's conscious of this quantum phenomenon, an observer phenomenon. So I use it accordingly. However, 99% of the people on the planet are not aware of that, but it does not mean that they're not using it. They cannot get away from using it as long as they got these structures in their brain. They use it every day. And then they wonder why they say stuff like this, Rich. Man, I wonder why I stay broke. Or, man, I wonder why I lost another job. Or, man, I wonder why I wrecked another car. I'm going to tell you why. Because you don't know that you can think fourth dimensionally and move into a state in the future and occupy it and be able to create a bridge of incident that will mimic what you've been imagining in your mind. So what you keep doing is you keep seeing the same stuff every day. You keep having the same thoughts every day. And your hippocampus is only producing images from present memory. You're not producing a new phenomenon. You're not using the imaginative process to create new imagery, even though it has not came into fruition yet. So all your brain can do for you is consistently create the same phenomenon over and over and over again, because you have not planted any new imagery. So you keep watching all these things on the news. You keep feeling these same thoughts about all these things on the news. How about you create from a space internally and turn your focus and your attention inward in order to change the dynamics in the 3D visible spectrum of light? This is the mystery science, man. That's the mystery science. It ain't nothing else. It ain't nothing else. And the quantum will respond to you through linguistics. So you'll be able to see it through language. You'll be able to identify what you're tapping into the quantum through language. You'll see it in the stories, through certain names in the stories. You'll know that you got your quantum shake and bake going. You see? You see? So now, how is this as above, so below, right? How do we understand what's going on in the body? And I'm just disseminating this information so that we can take another route when these things happen, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to tell you something about the priesthood. We get it in. Some of the stuff I can't say over the radio waves. We decided that we're not going to do that anymore, right? But for anybody that's been following the body of work that we done put together over the last 3 years, they clearly know that we use this information to get busy down here when it comes to injustices, right? So, and we'll talk about that later because we got something coming up specifically dealing with that, right? So, I don't want to hog the mic, man, because we this work is some of the most marvelous work ever to be put down and recorded in the history of man. And Anpu has a formula that he's been working with for the last 2 years. I've been privileged enough to be privy to that, to know how these things work. And I'm going to give him the mic at this moment so that he can delve into this as it relates to the subject matter, man.
Indeed, man. I love you, man. This is the whole, the whole purpose of this thing, man. I want to elaborate on a few points, y'all, that he made. I'm gonna make his teaching. That's that Gemini. I'm gonna make it real simple and come from a different angle. A few points that he mentioned was you are God, And to take that position and to really understand that is a very powerful thing to do, because anything outside of that is to remain in a position of being a victim. I'm not God. There's somebody else that's doing something to me. There's clearly white people who are out their mind and they're creating this phenomenon, this injustice, and it's never you invoking the power that's inside of you. So if you can find it in your heart of hearts that God made you, you believe in a God, an all-powerful being, this intelligence that's inside of you, then know that you are it. One of the movies, a few movies to get, when the Prime Minister was talking about how somebody gets off the bench, and if you see me moving away from him, and for example, if Ju is on the bench and I get up and I start walking away, he's necessarily, the farther I walk away, the less he can see of me and the less I can see of him. He can't see the detail and the things that's on my neck, and he can't see certain things. So a movie to get about this different perception about reality, one great movie is called Vantage Point. Another one is that latest movie with Will Smith that just came out, which is the bomb, Biggie, Never Lose Focus. Ooh, they was getting it in with that one, Never Lose Focus, which is telling you to always observe. Focus is to make an observation, which is very, very interesting, a concept in quantum physics, y'all, called the double slit experiment and wave function collapse. You want to look into that, wave function collapse. All right. The Prime Minister also mentioned something about the mental process. Again, we'll talk about the application as we get towards the end of the show. So stay with us definitely for that, because it's about, he said, no gun, no bullet, no paperwork. How do you do this? You're going to have to use all of that. But for those of you that are up on the frequency and want to use the power of your mind, stay with us, because we talk about the mental application. And also, back in the day, man, it was a group that had a music group in the 60s that was called The Fifth Dimension, and they came out with an album called Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In. You're in the Aquarian age. And the fifth dimension is what we call the dimension of energy. Fourth dimension is time. Third dimension is your reality. Now, if we're going to play this game, okay, and I tell people all this all the time, don't sit there and play chess because you're playing with a square. The whole chessboard is a square. And then you got squares within the squares, which is four corners. You're playing on level 4. You're playing within the realm of time. When you go beyond time, you come to the realm of energy. Fifth dimension, hence the pentagon, which is a 5-sided geometrical shaped building who thinks warfare 24/7. You really have to ponder and marvel at the fact that why do people who go to war in a building that is constructed as a 5-sided figure? So 11, 22, 33, 44, you ain't talking nothing, absolutely nothing, because the war machine plays on level 5. You're going to have to go beyond the fifth dimension to get with this whole program down here. I am telling you that by just looking at the simple schematic of this physical reality. And that's why the Spirit Force came through with that group called Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In. All right? Welcome to the fifth dimension thing. I am telling you that's where it is. You got to go beyond that. All right? So stay with us and we'll talk about that. This thing in Charleston, I wasn't going to touch it. I was actually laying down. Prime Minister called me and said, get up. We on. Who on? You on? No, we on. Oh, God. Here we go. So when you look at this history of the church, this church is very interesting when you're dealing with this whole South Carolina thing. Now, this is what you want to get into, ladies and gentlemen. You want to understand thought forms. And one of my favorite thoughts to study in this reality as a human is to understand what gave European people called the North, known as the Union, the idea, the mere idea. And I say it again, the mere idea to say, yo, those white people down south, they better cut that slavery stuff out, because we're about to go to war. It's going to be called a civil war, and they better cut it out, and they're going to die because I don't like it. You got to ask yourself that. What gave a group of white people, known as the North, known as the Union, the idea to say, you know what, that's not cool, we're going to war? Because the truth of the matter is, black people's history, you didn't get your freedom by the way of a successful revolt and then the war and you won your independence. That's not how the story unfolded. The story actually unfolded. There were small little revolts. Some were successful. You end up dying off of them. But white people came to get you and got you out the situation. That's the truth. And then you had some beautiful people called the abolitionists who were on the Underground Railroad. and they had candles, fire, candles that you light at vigils, candles that you light at your little, come take a bath with me, boo, let's get romantic, candles on your birthday cake. They had candles in a window to say, yo, this is the house that's going to help you get free while you're following the North Star. You're following the star to your freedom and your navigation. And later, Brother Rich will actually be posted up on the Underground Railroad route right there in front, literally. Am I lying, Rich? Literally on the Underground Railroad, and the name of his whole enterprise is called the Underground Railroad. That's
right.
Not a coincidence. Yeah. This is how the spirit moves you. It knows no time, and it knows absolutely no space. But again, I want you to see the contrast of what gave white people, the North, the idea to come and free black people so much that they went against their own other white people and murdered them by the thousands, if not millions, murdered them. Battle of Gettysburg, all these different battles, murdered them for your sake. It's very interesting. All right, so let's get into Charleston. We understand Charleston, South Carolina. I started in the early 1800s, like 1801, 1802. In fact, when you understand what was going on, the climate of the country, slavery, because the emancipation wasn't until 1865, right? In Charleston was actually home of the Scottish Rite Mother Council. Now, I'm going to tell you this. The spirit world gave a group of, you can call them Europeans if you want to, and that's cool, and I'm going to take that. They gave a group of European people a different idea to come and help black people out, and it was called Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Because in the colonies, you already had Freemasonry here. Don't you know, historically speaking, that there can only be one main Masonic body in jurisdiction? Anything else is out of order. It's called clandestine. You can't do that. You understand? Another group of people came in called the Scottish Rite, set up shop in Charleston, South Carolina, called the Mother Lodge, okay? York Rite Masonry, if you just Google this stuff, when you go up the degrees through York Rite Masonry, you come into the Knights Templar. When you get up into that rite, you have to swear your allegiance to the Christian faith. There's nothing wrong with that. However, they go through a reenactment of the Crusades. When you go back historically speaking, that was what we have today, a clear black and white issue. African, Islamic, Moors, who came from a Kemetic banner before that, went to war with white Christian European people who were playing for global domination in the name of God. One thing about white folks is they will fight you and kill you in the name of God. You don't really believe in God strong enough to fight and kill back in the name of God. That's the difference between the mentality. So we better wise up real quick. Now, when you understand that the York Rite aspect was a certain mindset that came from an old world order, domination and crusades, okay? Scottish Rite Masonry came in and said, listen, we ain't going to go through the crusade reenactment. I know, I've been through the degree work. We ain't going to go through that particular reenactment. We're going to set up our own thing. Truth be told, for real, especially in Louisiana, when you go do the research real quick, you'll see in Louisiana, they conform their own certain mystical rites in the first, the second, and third degree, and Osiris is actually mentioned in those degrees, okay? Different story. However, now, when you understand this whole thing that's taking place here, they came in because it was about the freedom of black folks that was about to get launched, all right? This is early 1800s, 1802, 1803. I find it a coincidence at that time you had the Barbary Wars. The United States is going to war with Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, these North African countries. Europeans can't even get into the Mediterranean Sea. They can't even technically get back home. So at the same time they had the Barbary Wars with African Moors, Stephen Decatur and all of them, right, going against African Moors at that time, you had a new Masonic body coming inside of the slave colonies of North America. That's a fact. All right, just look at this. Just look how the spirit works. All right. Now, when you get into the higher degrees of Freemasonry, it's something called it was called Morin's Rite. Stephen Morin is supposed to be this French guy. Check this out. He's supposed to be this French guy, right, who had the mysteries and got the charter from France to confer these particular degrees. Now, he's from Haiti. Interesting. He's from Haiti, the place of the voodoo, the magic, the mind power. The only people who were successful in not even never being conquered by the Europeans in their conquest, Haiti. He's from Haiti, They set up shop in Charleston, and he's the one that's conferring these high degrees. Then they later changed the name of the degree from Morin's Right to the Prince of the Sublime Secret. What's the secret and who's the prince? Don't you know to this day when he left Haiti, he went to Jamaica, man. He went to Jamaica, set up the Grand Lodge of Jamaica, and he died and he's buried in Jamaica. You're not going to tell me that was a white man, okay? Now, this gets interesting. So I just want to give you a little contrast on that because as we move up into the 1800s, right? Now, like the Prime Minister pointed out, Denmark Vesey, they get at him and say, listen, you tried to plan a slave revolt in 1822, but they executed him on July 2nd. Now, July 2nd is interesting because anywhere from July 1st to the 4th, we are at what's called as the aphelion, all right? This is when the sun and the earth are absolutely furthest away from each other. This is a fact. This is why on July 1st, it's Canada Day. It's the new year. But if you just got a simple piece of paper out, or you don't even got to do that, let's just say on the left side is Sirius, then it's the sun in the middle, and then on the right side is the earth. See, that is a Syrian sun-earth alignment. This is the same temple of Isis that we built to the great star Sirius. This is Sirius XM radio. This is why they're successful. They got the dog as the logo because if the Canis Major, that star or that sun Sirius sits in the Canis Major constellation. Okay? So on July 2nd, you have this alignment. Sirius, sun, then the earth. Okay? So they killed Denmark Vesey around that time. Remember, this is a Haitian thing as well. All right? Now, this is a Syrian alignment. Now, when you look at yesterday's date when the shooting took place, and they said about 9 p.m., where was the moon at? See, the Prime Minister told you that your thoughts get stuck in the field where the pull of the moon is, basically. Okay, you're vibrating right there on the emotional plane. Everybody knows that the moon corresponds to emotions, corresponds to a woman's menstrual cycle. Your emotional energy can get trapped in the gravitational pull of the moon, okay? The moon was at 14 degrees Cancer. So if you can look up under 14 degrees Cancer, you will see the star Sirius, okay? So the moon was technically, quote unquote, what we call a conjunction or in direct alignment with Sirius. So if you want to call home, when Bobby Hemmings say, get on the phone with the spirit world, I'd be so amazed why don't nobody say, well, Bobby, how do you get on the phone with the spirit world? Well, I'll tell you one of the ways to get on the phone with the spirit world is just simply project your thoughts. Now, you can use the moon as a satellite because that's what they tell you it is. But satellite not in the sense, well, it's just circling around the earth. No, it records data. It sends data and receives data. That's what a satellite does. You can bounce your thoughts off the moon. We did it during the Floyd Mayweather fight and made birds appear in the news. It's one of the things that we did on purpose. We call it the Raven activation on purpose. We said, you're going to make ravens come out. You're going to make ravens come out. I want you to go outside, look at the moon, and see ravens flying. And then ravens came in the news. I'm not making this up. We can actually show you this. All right? While everybody was concentrated on Floyd and Pacquiao and all their emotion was there, we used the emotion of the people and got on the celestial science and cast a thought at the moon, bing, and it bounced back into this reality. It's real simple. It ain't hard. Right. It's real easy. All right? So, when you look at this thing, Denmark VC went out on a Syrian alignment. Now, as the Prime Minister said, this church has been through all kinds of things. Well, this church also, every year in Charleston, South Carolina, they actually celebrate the Emancipation Proclamation. Why? Because there was one point in time in the early 1800s that South Carolina said, listen, this was in 1834. All black churches were outlawed in Charleston. So they had to get together in secret. They weren't playing that church thing after they burnt it down and all that. Nope, you ain't allowed to have no church. So in 1865, then at the Emancipation Proclamation, churches were allowed to be built. Now, I'm going to tell you something about this history. You got to look at this. You got to watch how the spirit world moves. I promise you, when you look at the first state to secede from the Union at the election or before the election of Abraham Lincoln, when they knew Abe Lincoln was going to get in, you know, the one that looks kind of black, he don't look all the way European. And even if he was European, for some reason they choose to put him on a penny, and he's the only one on the coin that's facing the opposite way, and everybody else is facing the other way on the coin. because it's like, well, he was the black guy, but you got to understand that this is the spirit world that's moving. When South Carolina knew that Abe Lincoln got in, they said, we up out this Union shit. We ain't rocking with this no more. They crazy. They trying to let these black folks go. We going to go back, and these United States people who set up shop on our territory called South Carolina, we about to rock them. And they went, and it's called the Battle of Fort Sumter, Sumter. Look it up, the Battle of Fort Sumter. Don't you know they attacked a ship called the Star of the West? Now, when you look at this, the Star of the West was a civilian ship. It was a civilian ship that was employed, a regular ship. So the South thought it was a regular ship. It was a regular ship employed by the North to say, listen, we need you to carry some weapons down south. Just white folks. We need you to carry some weapons on the Star of the West. You're in the Western Hemisphere, the Star of the West. Carry that on down south for us. And they did that. So the attack on, and the funny thing about it was, if I ain't mistaken, you can look it up, this ship was escorted by the USS Brooklyn. Brooklyn, stand up, okay? I'm telling you that this is real stuff, all right? So this is Star Wars, literally playing out in human affairs, all right? So they bring these weapons on in here, then the Civil War gets started in Charleston in South Carolina was the first ones to start it off, all right? But I'm telling you, it happened by the way of the Star of the West. That was really the kicking point of this whole thing, all right? Now, as we move forward, Charleston celebrates the Emancipation Proclamation because they know in Charleston, like, shit, well, it was a time that we couldn't even have churches down here. And ever since Abe Lincoln came and the Emancipation Proclamation came, we represent that day because this is what allowed us to worship God in peace, okay? So they do a parade on the first of the year. They do a parade on New Year's, and they end it at this church. Now, what is New Year? January the 1st. What is January the 1st? That is called the perihelion. That's opposite now. This is when the sun and earth are at their closest point. But let's go back to that piece of paper. Sirius on your left, now it's the earth, and then it's the sun. See, 6 months later, we on the opposite side. Look at a wall clock. If we all at 12 o'clock right now, when we go 6 months later and we get to 6 o'clock, we're on the complete opposite side of the solar system, okay? So on this side at 6 o'clock, or what we call July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, up in that area, Canada Day is a new year that says, listen, we celebrate our year when Sirius, sun, then earth is aligned. And then the United States say, nah, we do it the opposite way. Sirius, earth, then the sun, okay? So when you hear people talking about, the Gregorian calendar, that they're in their emotions. They don't even understand celestial space. This is a Syrian thing. So now what you start to see is a war on Syria. But that ain't no racist thing. That it plays out that way, but that's the spirit world's way of getting your attention and trying to get you to call on the great power. So your ancestors built temple to a certain star called Sirius. But the only way that you're going to know is if there's a war on Sirius. And the only way that you go on Syria, the only way that you're going to know is if the biggest, best XM radio channel comes out and their name is Sirius XM Radio.
With a dog with a logo.
With a dog with a star and the eye as the logo. The only way that you're going to know is when you start looking at when certain people died in the days of parades, these things line up. The only way you're going to know is when that happened, the moon was directly in front of that star or that sun, which the Dogon said you're from. So while you're looking at it as racism, how do you know that this is not a spiritual transmission? It has to be if you believe in the higher power called God. It has to be. What is God's take on this? Why did you allow it to happen? I always ask that question. What are you trying to get to? Certain things have to play out in this reality. It's not going to be pretty, but you have to understand both sides of the equation here. It's always God at work here. Always. Always. All right? So, let me make sure I got these points, man. Even when you look at this dude's name, Dylan, right? That goes back into the Welsh mythology, and it means a tide or a flow or a wave. And when you start getting into the Welsh mythology of the gods, you will see a battle that starts to take place with Arian Rod or Arian Hod, right? Which means round wheel as in a zodiac wheel, a wheel, right? And it talks about how these waves of wars were coming. Waves. Interesting. Because in quantum physics, we know that everything exists in the form of a wave first. Everything is a possibility. See, you are a wave. You got to really understand that. And you got a heartbeat, you got a brain wave. If you got hair on your head, put some hot water on that thing, damp it up, get your sport and waves, throw a do-rag on, what you going to have on top of your head? You're going to have waves, right? Everybody got waves. So you are a wave of energy. The wave is just potential. It exists everywhere. Microwaves, sound waves, you can hear our voice. You can hear our voice right now because sound is traveling in the form of a wave, okay? So everything is a wave until you look at it, and what I tell y'all to go do, look at what's called the wave function collapse, because now you can make the wave stop and become a physical particle, okay? So since we're waves, what we look at becomes physical reality. This is very true. Now, I guess we can get to a little bit of the application aspect, and I'll come off this thing. Again, only thing we have to do, and the only thing we're going to do, is what we've been doing, and it's real simple. And here comes the plug. It's real simple. 7-11. In fact, before that, on July the 5th, when I tell you July 4th and all that was, that's a great alignment. That's a Syrian alignment, okay? So when you barbecuing on July 4th, man, you're doing a great deed, especially if you're into that Bible thing, because you know God like barbecue. He like to burn offerings. God like barbecue. That's what they were telling you, okay? So no, that's what they were telling you, straight up. God like barbecue. All right? That's why we love it, too. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to be in Columbus, Ohio on July the 5th at Ngozzi's Barbershop. The information is on MyAstrologyCoach.com. Go to the events tab. You can see it on the calendar. It's there under seminars. We're there in Columbus, Ohio. But 7-11. Ooh, 7-11. We got a book release called Spiritual Wisdom of the 21st Century. 7-11, like Beyonce, 7-11. Beyonce wants a bae. Oh, she sold out. She wants a bae. No. See, that's the spirit world telling you that, listen, yes, she is wants a bae, but that's telling you that's where your power is at. This is the great Shakti. She can go to the Super Bowl and make the lights come out. I don't care if you think it's a coincidence or not. I am telling you the power of who she is, all right, and who her husband is. He's God. He's one of the illest things I've ever seen in this reality. I promise you. The reason why he's the best is because he took a system called the Bible, Christianity, Judaism, whatever you want to call it, and he took their God. And once he became that God, he became the supreme ruler down here. You got to give him his damn props. I can't stand when anybody hate on Jay-Z. I can't stand it. You like literally are a hater. Literally, if you hate him. You know, because you got to look at the success of a person. You see what I'm saying? So when you understand his wife coming from the Louisiana aspect, when we know we got live pictures of what you would call a ghost riding a bike down the street in Louisiana when we went down there in 2014 for one of our trips. Live pictures. We've been to the graveyard of Marie Laveau and her teacher. We've been at the graveyard and got pictures and stuff with this energy popping up, with ghosts with their arms crossed in the middle of the path taking pictures for us. Ghosts popping up, taking pictures for us, posing. We got the pictures. So this is the quantum aspect that we speak about. See, if your ancestors are alive and they're intelligent, then can we call upon them to make some change go in our direction and stop all the damn complaining? In other words, if God is real, can you please reveal yourself and start to pull out some can of whip ass in our favor so we can make some progression? If you call on it or him, her, whatever you want to call it collectively, it happens. 7-11, we in Atlanta for the stump off. We're going to have a book release on that Saturday. That Sunday, we're going to go up to that mountain. And I tell you this, and we got the pictures to prove it. Because, you know, that's the home of the KKK. The KKK inaugurated themselves in a fire ceremony, and you can Google it on YouTube, KKK inauguration. They was on Stone Mountain, okay? When we went to Stone Mountain in 2013, it was intense fog up there. We did a banishing rite. We made the fog disappear. We got the before and after pictures, all right? A couple of days later, the first would really happen a few weeks later in early April, around April the 7th. Minister Ju said, listen, I want to get everybody on the radio show who was a part of that trip. It was called We've Been to the Mountaintop. Minister Ju led that radio show. People gave their testimonials of the experience of what happened. Less than 2 hours later, I promise you, an earthquake went off in Lincolnton, Georgia, on the same parallel. It could have went off in Stone Mountain, but the reason it went off in Lincolnton, because anytime you hear Lincoln, that's to put your consciousness back on this black and white issue as it appears on one plane, the physical dimension, okay? So it went off right there. And then a few weeks after that, that's when it surfaced that this guy was like, you know what? he created an online petition to remove the faces off Stone Mountain. What gave him the idea to do it when we just came there? I'm just going to keep it. Why did, all the time he's been living there, now all of a sudden you want to create a petition? Where did he get the idea from? You see? So we have to learn how to program space with our intent. Very important, because as the Prime Minister was giving you the example about the hippocampus and the taxi driver, don't you know, like in your room, right? Let's just say your house is dirty and you upset, like, clean this mess up. It's funky in here. It ain't right? Your space ain't right. Don't you know that basically when you understand where you at in reference to the solar system, the Earth goes around the sun, it takes 365 days. So just imagine a circle around the sun, and imagine 365 days it takes to go around the sun. So we basically got stations around the sun. It's called your birthday. You may be over here, this person over here, because we know we're going around the sun. So you got light stations, you got space stations called your birthday, okay? Now, when you have an accident in space, right, it's no different than when you had an accident on the physical. I can remember the intersection that a lady ran. She was in a Cadillac. She ran through the light, hit my 79 Malibu as I was going through the intersection, totally spun me around. So every time you go past this physical space, you can remember where you met that girl at. You can remember when you had that kiss behind the bleachers, behind that high school. You have these memories once you get in this area of space. I got pulled over right here. You remember that, right? Well, what you don't know is, what most of us don't know is, when you have a horrific event or a great event in space, cosmic space, when certain planets get back in this same region of space, right, you will have that same event will reoccur again if you're not up on the frequency and know how to change that. Okay?
Right.
So it's not, and let me be clear, it's not the planet that do something to you. I don't believe in that's bull crap, because you're smart enough to build a weapon to destroy a planet if you know how to do it. So it's not the planet. You always have to make a decision in this reality. So it's your consciousness that's creating it. In other words, it's really your lack of consciousness, your unconscious activity and actions is creating these events. I'll give you an example of how that works, and I'll come off of it. Your unconscious works like this. I hate this job. I don't like going to this job. It gets on my damn nerve when I go to this job. Can't stand this job. On my way to work, I got into an accident. Why? Because you kept on programming yourself like you don't like this job, you don't want to be there, but you was consciously working against yourself because you consciously got up and went to a place that you didn't like. So it ain't the planet that did anything. It was your own choice. You wasn't consciously aware. You was in contradiction to yourself. So when you get on this science, and right now we've leading a prosperity club for 20 weeks, that we doing, and if you friends, you can go find us on Facebook, Noble Anpu Galileo. You will see that we got a prosperity club going, and we just started on Monday, and go down the wall and see the testimonials by using, as we can show you how to use it on both sides, and I'm gonna give you the light side. The light side is you can use this how to better your life. I promise you, it's like the law of attraction. It's real simple. Think it and so say you be in the end, live in the end. We got over $4,000. Go to my page. Somebody just wired me through PayPal $750. So now I love what y'all doing. Just go to your house that y'all getting. You can have that, $750. You will see mad testimonials of people who couldn't get a job a couple years, who've been put over 450 applications. She started applying these principles, and now she got a job at Princeton on the campus. I ain't lying. Mr. Ju will tell you. Rich will tell you. Go on my timeline, and the people, if they on Facebook, I tag their name in it. We got a prosperity club that's going. I ran this before back in 2013. The power of collective positive emotion and positive intent will make your life better. You was all of a sudden you will walk in the house and you will open your mail and you will see that you are a part of a class action lawsuit from 3 years ago from an old car that you have and you ain't know nothing about it. I don't care if the check is only for $3. Things like that will start to happen in your life. We got to get in the business of creating coincidences, because coincidences mathematically mean when two things coincide, they go together. In human terms, we play, oh, that's just a coincidence. What are you talking about? Yeah, coincidence is good. Two things are coinciding together. I'll come off of it with that, man.
Yeah, man, that's what it is. And go ahead, Rich. Go ahead.
Real quick, and speaking about collapsing the wave into particle and observing, and, you know, one of the main, you know, us continuing to observe, you know, I know brothers that call me that say, you know, I'm trying to ignore, what, you know, all the nonsense on the news, and either their girl will call them, or they hear about it at the barber shop, or they hear about it here, you know, wherever. And it just get them depressed or get them down. You know, growing up, you hear the stories over and over again about certain black people who came up in the struggle, came up in poverty, and they used the poverty, the observation of poverty, and, you know, and just growing up in the hood, and they used that to propel them and to inspire them to create extreme, enormous amounts of wealth, whether it be Master P or, you know, countless other black celebrities that they always tell you about. Man, yo, I was so broke back in the day, man. I used to just always imagine this or imagine that. And when I think about that now as I'm older, I think about the word alchemy, turning lead to gold. What these brothers did, what these sisters did, over and over again. Had a horrible situation to work with. They observed the horrible situation, but they made it into gold. They made it into a huge success. Tell the people about using alchemy. How can we use alchemy in these situations when we see some white dude shoot up a church and kill 9 people, or when we see Eric Garner get choked out, or whatever? Because like Minister Ju said, somewhere in all of us there's this compassion and there's this humanity where sometimes it just gets to you. So, but we understand the power of emotions. Me and Ju did a whole show on that. So we don't want to let the emotions get to us where we're sending negative vibrations out into that electromagnetic hemisphere. So how can we use these events that we continue to see and be alchemists with it?
I take that. What we're going to have to do is start to learn how to use light. We have to understand that light and space is intelligent, and that your emotions, when you see these things taking place, need to be funneled. And I used to say this years ago. I used to tell people, you know, when you watch these movies and you get mad, people got mad at Django, and that went over their head. And they get mad at all these other movies that depict all this whatever about black people. I said, okay, you mad? Or you see the news and you get mad? Let me tell you what you need to do. You need to go to a sacred place in your home, right? And you need to immediately go in on the imaginary plane to create phenomenon in this world, because you are charged at that moment. And I said at the beginning of the show, emotions and imagery create reality. And it's real simple. I want everybody listening to this show tonight just to look around in your immediate environment right now. You think this is some hocus pocus pseudo talk. No, this is the real science. You look around right now and you tell me one thing in your immediate environment that did not first come out of a man or a woman's imagination. You cannot do it. You can't do it. The chair, the lamp, the computer, the refrigerator, the ironing board, the mop, the bike, I don't care what it is. It first was an object in somebody's hippocampus that later became externalized because they saw the imagery in their mind first, although they did not have the physical components in the external world to verify it yet. So when we tell you when you see these things, you have that emotional discharge, who you mad at? You mad at the shooter? You mad at the politician? Who you mad at? Okay, now go create a scene that would imply that you will have justice from that person, whatever you think that justice is, right? That's right. Go create a scene where you can see it happening, because what's going to happen is events occur in time and space, and they follow thought. They follow thought. I had a young lady whose house got broken into, over $150,000 worth of items stolen from her home. She called me and said she's depressed and she wants to talk to me about quantum physics. This woman's house got broke into, but she has so much faith in what I'm talking about. She says, what can you do to help me? So I give her a technique dealing with imagining in a certain type of way. She's a woman. She owns a beauty shop. She got buku bread, right? Most important thing on her mind, she got a couple purses that got stolen, valued over $20,000, some bags that she really wanted, that she couldn't get back because they don't sell them anymore. So I tell her, I say, okay, fine. This is what I need you to do. I need you to put this in your mind right here and see this happening like this. Do you know, 3 weeks later, after I told her how to do this, a lady comes into the beauty shop who only comes in there, she says, maybe 2 or 3 times a year to get her hair done, stays about 2 blocks away from her home. Comes in there and she's having a conversation with the lady. Yeah, girl, my house just got broken in. They stole all my purses, my jewelry, $150,000 worth of stuff taken out of my home. And the lady say, well, what kind of bags was it? My nephew came into the house last night with some bags. And she said, yeah. She said, well, let me show you the bag. These are the type of bags. These are the bags that she got stolen. She said, girl, them the same exact bags my nephew came into the house with. She said, really? She said, so let me call my nephew. So the nephew get on the line. He said, yeah, I bought these from the barber shop. Somebody came in there boosting the joint, and I copped them off him to give them to his mother, right? This is around Mother's Day, I think, or something. And come to find out, they was the young lady's bags whose house got broken into, but because she applied the principles that I told her to apply, the bridge of incident will find you. You don't have to go looking. You don't have to go looking. The quantum will collapse the waves because you're doing the observation, and it will find you because you are the originator of the idea. So, listen, we're talking from experience. This ain't no theory. This ain't no hyperbole. We're talking from experience of what we do regularly, right? But we decided to take it to another plateau to get into the prosperity because, when these situations happen, we realize people really don't have the impulse to want to apply this information so that they can see major events happen on this planet. So we decided we're going to do it in a more constructive manner. And if you feel this message that we're talking about tonight, you need to be in Atlanta on 7-11 for the book release and at Stone Mountain the following day where we going to get it in and you'll see what we're talking about.
That's right. That's right. I'm going to answer that what was said, too, as well. What the Prime Minister just said, when that event happened, that horrible event happened, take that charged emotion and put it into something constructive as far as your holy imagination. And however you see you want to have justice is what you actually put forth. See, the thing is, if you don't vibe with that, is because, look at this, I'm going to say this real carefully. If you think that's hocus pocus, it's because you don't believe that you have enough power in your own mind to do it. That's all that boils down to. We're going to make it real simple. That's what it boils down to. When the collective force gets together, see, why you think that back in the day it was like, oh, no, we don't want y'all old folk we don't want y'all doing no spirituals around here. It was this thing about when you gather around together in harmony with a certain intent, you circle around the walls of Jericho, it will physically come down if that's your intent. That's real science, all right? So that's what you do. That's literally what you do. If it's a collective group of people get together and if your God is real, just simple, we can call it go pray. Go pray and put that imagination thing out there. And like Rich said, you got a lot of brothers and sisters who use the state of poverty to propel them into a whole different reality. I'm going to tell you why. You know why? Because they weren't focused on the poverty. See, I gave people these techniques that we have in I Am Prosperity, and I got the sheet right here, and I ain't lying. I'm telling you, go to my timeline on Facebook, Noble Anpu Galileo, you will see it. Have people adjust their frequency, adjust their thought. And I give you something on how to adjust your thought, right? We had a young lady who she was like, man, what am I doing wrong? Why am I going through this? I just feel like I'm repeating life circumstances all over again. And I've been focusing on clearing my heart from old pain, leaving the past behind and moving forward. Now, a lot of us think that, and I test people with this, what's wrong with that sentence? I'm not sure what I've done wrong. I've been focusing on clearing my heart from old pain, leaving the past behind and moving forward. You would think like, wow, that's positive. That's good for you, sister. But I'm going to tell you, there's something very wrong with that picture. One, she thinks she's done something wrong. And if she had, that's okay, because I'm going to tell you why wrong is good in a second. But look what she's focusing on. I'm focusing on clearing my heart from old pain, leaving the past behind and moving forward. You can't never move forward if you're thinking about the past. It's impossible. How you gonna move forward when you actually thinking and doing things of the past? How you gonna move forward when you're clearing the old things out of the way? The more you focus on the old, the more of the old stuff is gonna come. That's the real part of your ego. We call that Amalek in the Bible. That's the real part of the ego. I got another story that was so great that this woman said, my mission statement is this: I have a successful music career. I'm attracting everyone and everything I need and the desires at all times. Money flows to me easily and frequently. I am debt free. You may think that's great, and it is great, but I'll tell you something wrong with that. She says, I'm debt free. Notice how the ego will come in at the very end. See, she's attracting all of this thing. Money flows to me easily, and here come old Amalek coming in at the end. I'm debt free. Don't you know when you put in your consciousness that you want to be debt free, you're going to attract money because you got that in your statement too? But guess what? You're going to also attract the debt in order to create the situation for you to become debt free. You're going to always keep going back and forth. Remove the debt totally out of the picture because we automatically know what you're going to do. See, with us, we've been so conditioned by the poverty and the pain, we addicted to it. And we always see that and focus on that because our senses is bombarded by that. Let me backtrack a little bit. The reason why when things are wrong, that's a perfect indicator to let you know that the law of attraction in your thoughts is about to create an unwanted event in your life called a not good event. What you need to do in that particular moment when it's not good is focus on the things that you want. If it's justice, like the Prime Minister say, focus on justice. If there's more prosperity and things of that nature, you need to simply focus on that. There are a few techniques that you have to do to apply this correctly, and we don't have enough time to really get into that, and we'd be segueing into a whole other thing. But that's what you need to do to answer your question, Brother Rich.
You know, and just one last question before we wrap it up. When you see events like this in Charleston, South Carolina, and just keeping in, considering the events that we continue to see and considering the history of America and how, when we deal with the Moors and everything, there's no other group of people that are forced to, for those who have chose to incarnate down here, as what the collective consciousness terms black, or whatever the term is collectively for this group of quote unquote so-called oppressed people. There's no other group that has been forced to tap into their imagination because their senses have been bombarded with negative imagery of them constantly. It's sometimes, a person will tell me, oh man, that we see that white person, that's white privilege because that white dude, the cops don't stop that white dude. On one level, it's white privilege, but on another level, it's the confidence and the belief in that white dude that he's not going to be stopped. But it's easier for him to believe that because it's reinforced every day because of the collective conscious system that we live in. So yeah, there's a term for it called white privilege, but the quantum thing that gets him off from the police is the confidence that's in him. Your confidence will make you the best criminal, the best thief in the world. You'll never get caught if you're confident. And this is what people don't know. It's these emotions that we harbor inside, whether it's fear, will let you get caught by a cop, or whether it's, just confidence that lets you get away from the cop. So we have this group of people that constantly bombarded with negative imagery. And the only thing left to do, the safest place is our imagination when you get down to it sometimes. Because if we look on TV, if we look at the advertisements, if we turn on the radio, they might tell you 20 times in an hour, you don't even know it that you ain't shit if you quote unquote black in this reality. So my question to you is, the one is the all and the all is the one. Why would we choose to incarnate down here and use race as this great teaching lesson for us to remember, to gain knowledge of self all over again? Why has race been the ultimate, has been the theme down here in this time-space continuum?
Because it is always a constant, static, and stable fluctuation. It's always a constant, static, and stable situation that's going on this planet, right? It is the good and the evil, the duality that exists in 3D reality. It is the nature of this place in order for you to garner experience to constantly expand consciousness. So that means that it's always going to be some evil folks. It's always going to be some good folks. It's always going to be what looks to be a disparity between race and gender, etc., etc., because these things offer friction so that we can continue to have experiences and grow in consciousness. That's why people always say, well, man, we got to get past this thing. When is humanity going to get past this right here? When are we going to get, and they always use the word humanity because we know that collectively it's only one consciousness, man. And when we fall down into this realm, things start to become separate and duplicates and all these other things so that we can garner experience, man. This is what this whole thing is about. But the beauty of it is you can choose the experience that you live out the most.
That's right.
You can choose that, right? So you got these people down here who are bigots and racist, right? They are just taking on old thought patterns. You got people down here who are dealing with the poverty gene and all. You're just taking on these old thought patterns because you're not conscious of being able to take. You got people down here saying, oh, I'm this color, I'm that color, et cetera, et cetera. See, man, it's a lot of emotionalism in this particular community, man, and I get it, right? But the reality is, Rich, man, this thing is not biased to race or gender.
Ooh,
and it is obvious. But because we have to have this, we got to have the morale boost up, and we got to have, you know, all of these things to build up our self-esteem to keep going. I get that part. But really, this thing ain't got nothing to do with that, man. It's about experiences and consciousness and different states. And you choose which one you want to be in. So the reason we come down here is for experience, man, to expand the omniverse, the universe, to keep this thing expanding. But guess what? When things expand, Rich, you know it got to be a contraction, right? You know when that baby's coming out of the womb, right? It got to be some contraction. It got to get tight a little bit for it to open up a little bit. Then it got to go back and get tight a little bit for it to open up a little bit. So we're witnessing growing pains. The contractions is the black and white, the gender, the racism, etc. In order for this thing to expand to another level where we grow beyond that point. So this is why, man. This is why.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely the experience. And in essence, the question religiously what Rich is asking is, why did God have a conversation with the devil in the book of Job, and he plotting on the man Job, and God didn't kill the devil, he didn't arrest the devil, he ain't throw the devil, he ain't do nothing. In fact, he said, devil, where you been? And in English terms in the hood, that's saying, yo, my nigga, what's up? Where you been? That's kind of funny. Ain't you find that kind of odd? It's not to discredit the book, it's to show you the spiritual entanglement of a certain principle of what we perceive to be good and bad. So a lot of wisdom in that particular question and in that particular story. It's definitely for the experience, but like the Prime Minister said, you can make this reality whatever you want. See, consciousness wants to have an experience that you see we're not aware of when you don't tell your skin to grow back. Hey, skin, grow back after you get cut. Adjust my heart rate, please. Can you please produce more saliva? We're not necessarily conscious of those processes. So listen, it's fair to say that we are unconscious beings. Let's just keep it 100. There's trillions of cellular processes that's taking place right now that we have absolutely no knowledge about, okay? So we are really unconscious beings. Well, this consciousness, it seeks to have an experience. Now, you can direct this experience if you want to. And see, that's the thing. You're actually here. And let me say this. I know you're going to like, listen, you are here to tell God what to do. That's what you're here to do.
Come on,
that's right.
To
help God.
Come on, brother.
You're here to tell God what to do. You are the great composer.
That's right, brother.
You got to understand that. You are the great composer. All right? So this consciousness will have an experience with or without your conscious agreement.
That's right. So you saying people down here waiting for God to tell them what to do, meanwhile God's waiting for you to tell it what to do.
That's right. And Rich, you know how it's true. And this is real basic kindergarten understanding.
God says in the Bible, well, okay, make me an offering. Bring me some barbecue. And I'm going to smash them Amalekites. I'm going to smash them Edomites. Come to me and holler at me. Bring me some grub while you on the way, and I'm going to show you how we going to do it. So God don't never make a move historically without you petitioning God first. In other words, God needs your permission to kick his ass.
That's right.
Noble Anpu, I don't want to get too far off the subject. I know you've delved into Kabbalah. You've talked about it in the past. There was some book that I've seen before. You know, people did this great debate, is God a man, is God a woman? And I think it was something dealing with the Kabbalah. They said God is a verb. Did you, yeah, God is a verb. Like God is the great I am, like a verb. The
action.
Action, yeah. Is that what you mean by, is that the same thing what you mean by God's waiting for you to tell it what to do?
Well, absolutely. You can definitely say that without a shadow of a doubt. I am that I am, or what we call Yehe, Asher, Yehe in Hebrew, without a shadow of a doubt. But see, I'm going to tell you something else too. God is a hermaphrodite. Man, God is crazy. And I'm coming out with a mixtape where we just kick in the street gospel like this over some nice beats, Jay-Z beats and everything. And I ain't going to tell you the name of it, but we coming out with it. But when I say it, I'm saying it in a very respectful, clever way. But you got to understand, anytime you see a seahorse, this male creature that carries the baby around in his stomach, and you see an octopus, and you see an electrical eel, God is crazy. You got to understand that. And when I'm saying that in a genius way, though. So in the essence, absolutely, God is a verb. God is a hermaphrodite. God is male and female in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So it's anything that we can ever particularly ponder. And that's how I see it, Rich. You know what I mean? And from a Kabbalistic standpoint, what I really love, though, on a more physical plane of it, it represents the one aspect of God. See, God got many different attributes, like the 99 attributes of Allah and Islam. Well, over here in the Hebrew aspect, God got 72 attributes and 72 names and whatnot. And it's really dealing with the 72 days that Sirius is invisible, but that's a whole nother story because it's dealing with this light, because God is light. Thus, Jesus was the light of the world in the book of John, is dealing with the science of light. So we really get into it from an aspect of the presence of when you feel God is feminine, the Shekinah. And this is why the Jewish woman, or the Hebrew woman, whatever you want to call her, lights the candles on Shabbat on Friday evening, and she brings in the personification of God. Real simple, man plus woman makes how she becomes the physical manifestation of your particular thoughts. And it happens that way. So from that aspect, it's really God in the physical form. Oh, yeah, that's feminine as far as the Shekinah. And let me add to that, and then I guess we can get out of here, because the way that we approach our concept of God, right, most of us, the most worldwide phenomenon in the way that we approach deity or God or whatever we want to call it, right, in our limited perspective and language, right, is we pray. That's what we do, right? Mm-hmm. That's the number one corresponding agent to our concept of God, right? Now, when we look at prayer, because there's a lot of people that's bashing the people who got, just insensitive humans. You just got 9 people murdered in the church, and you got people on these social sites and saying, where was Jesus at then? Where was God at then? Well, these people who have lost their lives. They got children, man. Daughters, mothers, fathers, and the most you can do is exercise your ego from a little bit of information that you got, right? And then slander somebody and the spirit that existed inside of them, the consciousness that was once in that body, all to make a point about religion. Come on, man. Y'all crazy. Y'all just as crazy. So, but when we look at this thing in prayer, right, it's the Hebrew word nah. That's what it translates to. And it's a particle of speech that is usually attached to a verb, Rich, right? In the imperative passive mood, meaning, like when somebody's talking and you say, man, I need you to be quiet, or I need you to be being, right? As in continuous or in the future tense, action, motion. So when we see these things happen and people say, well, we need to pray, right? Well, what's happening is because they don't know, they getting their concept of prayer from a religious or spiritual context, but from that same context, they're not understanding the linguistics and what the people who had these revelations or these epiphanies about what spirituality was thousands of years ago, what they meant, right? And when you look at this word prayer, it's telling you that this is an imperative passive mood exemplified in the fashion of a verb, to be doing, which is something that is always continuous or in the future context. So now this ties us right back into the imagination, being the holy part of you, which is the God force inside of you. Because if prayer is to enact something that is in the future and put it into motion, right, that means we're working at a deficit if we're praying for something that has already collapsed out of its wave function into a particle, because now it is already part of physical matter and it has nothing to do with the future or saying to be being or to be moving or to step into in future tense, right? So we have to be constantly, when we're praying, creating future events in our mind so that we can step into it and the 3D world can catch up to the fourth dimensional idea. Mm-hmm. So we need to stop playing, man. We need to stop playing.
Mm-hmm. I definitely appreciate the show and the vantage point, the perspective from where you brothers come at with these events. It gives the power back to the individual. So I definitely appreciate that perspective, and you know, people out there is definitely going to resonate with the message. Give them your contact info if you haven't already, or give it to them again so they can holler at y'all for these amazing events that y'all put together.
All right. You can contact us. You can contact us by phone, 267-403-4078. Again, 267-403-4078 by phone. You get myself or Noble Anpu, either one of us. You can look us up on our website, www.myastrologycoach.com. If you're interested in any of the events that we named, go to the retreats or the events tab on the website. You'll be able to participate with us there. What else, man? I mean, Noble Anpu Galileo on the Facebook joint. And I mean, that's pretty much it, man. Noble, unless you got something else you want to say as far as where they can meet us at or find us at.
I mean, yeah, that's where we at, man. 7-11, mark the calendars. We in the ATL. We in Atlanta for that book release. You want to be there. You get the book free when you sign up for the workshop. We're going to have some cool spiritual technology there to show you about the aura, the chakras, your magnetic field, how to bridge the yin-yang energy, your emotion meter inside of you. We invested thousands of dollars in this technology to show you how to do it right, so you can actually see it. It ain't no hocus pocus. You can actually see it with devices. So we be in Atlanta with that on 7-11. And then, like the Prime Minister said, on the 12th, we up on the mountain. We're going to do our thing right there. And then if you can't make that and you want to come into Columbus, Ohio, that's July the 5th. We in Columbus, Ohio. You'll see that on the events tab on myastrologycoach.com. And there's a wonderful alignment that's out in the sky that talks about abundance and prosperity. As of right now, we only 4 days in. We got $4,383, and I'm not even counting another $4,000. It just ain't in my hand, but my man got it. But, you know, to date right now, and it's 19 more weeks of abundance in there. So if you visit My Astrology Coach, get into this I Am Prosperity and start learning how to bring some balance. You have to be the Chinese down here. The Chinaman got it. I love them because they do their meditation, right, Rich? They do their meditation and they get in a high frequency of thoughts. Everybody know the Buddhism and the Shaolin monks and the Wu-Dang masters, they thought level and their brain capacity is far superior to a lot of people based off of their ability to meditate, and then they'll kick your physical behind once you approach their peace. That's what you got to learn how to do, but do it in an urban, mystic way. We over here at myastrologycoach.com. Get at us.
And on that note, this Brother Rich, Underground Railroad Radio, we signing out, y'all. Peace.
Peace.